Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, Arthur Pierce thought he had it all: wealth, power, and a picture-perfect life with his young wife, Anna Vas. At 6 months pregnant, Anna radiated hope for their future. Yet behind the penthouse walls their marriage was crumbling. While Arthur chased deals and hid his affair with Simone, Anna quietly discovered the truth. Instead of breaking, she valued herself as Anna Dubois, a woman defined not by betrayal but by resilience. Alone in a storm, she brought her son Noah into the world and built a new life from the ground up. Months later, when Arthur's empire began to collapse, fate would bring them face to face again, a radiant, powerful, and no longer the woman he once controlled. This is the story of love lost, betrayal revealed, and a mother's courage to turn pain into strength. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest stories. The last image Arthur carried of his wife was her figure framed in the doorway of their penthouse, morning sunlight wrapping around her like a halo. She smiled softly, 6 months pregnant with their first child, embodying everything he thought happiness was. He blew her a kiss, promised he wouldn't be late, and stepped out, never realizing it was the last time he'd see that moment of peace. In the months ahead, Arthur's world would unravel in ways he could never have imagined, forcing him to confront the deepest truths about power, love, and loss. This is the story of a woman who vanished to reclaim herself, and a man who had to lose everything before he could truly see. The late afternoon sun spilled like molten gold through the vast windows of the penthouse Anna called home. It bounced off the sleek chrome furniture, warmed the marble beneath her feet, and cast dramatic shadows from the sculptures scattered across the space. At 28, Anna's life looked like something out of a glossy magazine spread. She was the radiant wife of Arthur Pierce, a real estate tycoon with a charm as grand as the skyline, stretching out beyond their balcony. With a baby on the way, theirs was the image of perfection. Weekend escapes to the coast, diamond earrings casually left on pillows, dinners at exclusive restaurants that booked out a year in advance. Arthur had mastered the art of appearances, both in business and in marriage, and for a long time Anna believed in that polished dream. She had fallen for his intellect, his magnetic smile, and the way he made her feel like the only person in a crowded room. He was her anchor, her partner, her future. But recently, that anchor felt loose. Their foundation seemed to be shifting, almost too subtly to name, yet undeniable. Arthur's once steady schedule became unpredictable, endless late-night meetings, sudden business trips mentioned only as he packed a suitcase. The warmth between them, once expressed through casual touches and quiet jokes, was replaced by formality, as though she were just another part of his empire. His gaze often passed through her rather than at her, fixed instead on the next deal, the next conquest. Anna tried to reason with herself. It's the stress of an acquisition, she thought, the pressure of his empire. Maybe, just maybe, it was her, the pregnancy amplifying every doubt, every insecurity. She wondered if she was just another cliché, the overly sensitive wife. Determined not to fall into that trap, she doubled down on her efforts. She cooked his favorite meals, even when the smell made her nauseous, left loving notes in his briefcase, and sent him ultrasound images of their unborn son. "Look at his little hands, Rafa," she texted, heart brimming with love. "He's waving at you." Arthur's replies came late, clipped. "That's great, can't wait." The words looked right, but felt hollow. One night, She set the table for two, bolognese simmering on the stove. 8 o'clock passed, then 9, then 10. Calls went unanswered, texts ignored. At 11, Arthur finally walked through the door, carrying the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume. "Sorry, darling," he muttered, loosening his tie. "That Henderson deal's a beast. I'm exhausted." He didn't kiss her, didn't glance at the table. He headed straight for the shower, leaving her in the kitchen with her untouched meal and the sharp sting of betrayal thick in the air. Anna placed a hand over her belly. The baby kicked, firm and insistent, a reminder of the life she had to protect. And in that silence, she realized this wasn't just her imagination. The dream she had clung to was beginning to fray, and she feared what would be left once it came apart completely. She needed answers, even if they broke her. She learned about breathing techniques, birthing positions, and how to deal with potential complications. Her pregnancy became her private sacred journey, a partnership just between her and her unborn son. At night, she would sit by the window, watching the sunset, paint the sky with shades of lavender and rose, and she would write. She filled journals with letters to her son, telling him not about the father who had betrayed them, but about the life she dreamed of for him. A life of honesty, resilience, and quiet strength. She wrote about the courage it takes to walk away from something that is broken and the strength it takes to build something new from the wreckage. "I want you to know the sound of the ocean, my love," she wrote one night, her hand resting on her belly, which was now big and stretched. "I want you to know that your world is not defined by glass towers and empty promises, but by the tides, the stars, and the goodness of your own heart. You are my new beginning. You are my brave new world." The months passed, her belly grew, and so did her confidence. She was no longer Anna Vasconel, the millionaire's wife. She was Clara, a woman who supported herself, propped up not by a man's wealth, but by her own ingenuity and determination. Her labor began on a wild, stormy night at the end of winter. The wind howled around the small cabin, and the rain beat against the windows in angry horizontal sheets. The power went out, plunging her into darkness, illuminated only by a few candles she had prepared. She was alone, terrified, but also strangely strengthened. As the storm raged outside, a different kind of storm raged within her. It was primal, painful, and utterly transformative. There were no doctors, no nurses, and no husband holding her hand. There was just her, the ancient wisdom of her body, and the fierce protective love for the son she was about to meet. In the hours before dawn, as the storm finally began to subside, her son was born. She pulled him to her chest, his tiny, warm body slick against hers, and his first cry mingled with the sound of the resting waves. She looked at his perfect, wrinkled little face, and tears, oh for Sexthouse-chan, relief, and overwhelming love streamed down her cheeks. She hadn't it. She had brought him into the world safely on her own terms. She named him Noah, a name that meant rest and comfort. He was her ark in the storm, her promise of a new beginning. Holding him in her arms in the quiet candle-lit cabin with the ocean as her witness, Anna felt a profound sense of peace. She had been erased, but in her place a new woman had been born. Amatha, a survivor, a force to be reckoned with. What do? You think of Anna's choice to disappear and build a new life alone. Was it a selfish act, or was it the only way she could protect herself and her son? Chapter 5. The Cost of Deception. In the months that followed Anna's disappearance, Arthur's carefully constructed world began to unravel, one insidious threat at a time. He had always seen himself as the sole architect of his success, the visionary, the deal-maker. He saw Anna as a beautiful, supportive accessory to his life, the person who managed the trivial domestic details, so he could focus on the important work of building his empire. He never understood that she wasn't just an accessory. She was the foundation. Anna had been the silent, invisible force behind his polished public persona. It was she who remembered his clients' birthdays and their wives' favorite flowers. It was she who flawlessly organized the charity dinners and corporate parties that were crucial for networking, ensuring every detail was perfect, from the seating charts to the wine pairings. She was the one who managed their social calendar with the precision of a military strategist, creating the effortless illusion of a man who had it all. Without her, the cracks began to show. He missed important meetings because he had forgotten to check the shared calendar she used to manage. He offended a potential investor by forgetting his name, a detail Anna would have drilled into him before the event. Deals that had once seemed certain began to falter. His legendary Midas touch seeming to have abandoned him. His colleagues and rivals began to whisper. His wife's disappearance was a tragedy. Yes, but the subsequent decline in his business acumen was a weakness. And in their world, weakness was blood in the water. The rumors about his affair with Simone, once whispered speculation, began to gain traction. A disgruntled former assistant, fired by Arthur in a fit of rage, leaked details of his frequent late-night meetings with his head of marketing. The story didn't make the major news, but it circulated with venomous speed through the inner circles of the city's business and social elite. The public sympathy that had once been his shield began to wear thin, replaced by a cynical and knowing suspicion. He was no longer the tragic hero. He was becoming a pariah. His relationship with Simone, which had been a thrilling escape, soured into a toxic codependency. Simone had been drawn to the powerful, confident industry titan. The man Sheno lived with was a shadow of that person, irritable, paranoid, and obsessed with his missing wife. She had moved into the penthouse, a move she had dreamed of, but it felt like she was occupying a museum dedicated to Saint Anna. Arthur refused to get rid of Anna's things. Her clothes still hung in the closet, her books were still on the nightstand, her perfume still lingered in the air. Simone felt like a ghost haunting another woman's life. She resented Anna's persistent, sanctified presence. She resented the pitying looks received from people who knew or suspected her role in the marriage's dissolution. And most of all, she resented Arthur's growing inability to separate her from his downfall. If you hadn't been so careless, she might never have found out. He had snarled at her one night after losing a major contract. "I was careless." Simone snapped back, her voice dripping with scorn. "You were the one who was married, Arthur. You were the one who lied to her every day. This isn't my fault. This is the mess you made." The arguments became more frequent, more vicious. The glamour of the affair had disappeared, revealing the ugly reality underneath. A relationship built on deception and convenience couldn't withstand. Real pressure. Simone began discreetly sending out her resume, building her own exit strategy. She had latched on to a falling star, and she was smart enough to know when it was time to let go. Arthur, meanwhile, was trapped in a downward spiral of his own making. He drank more, slept less. He found himself wandering the silent, cavernous penthouse at night, touching the things Anna had left behind. A strange mix of fury and a longing so deep it felt like a physical ache. He had thought he could have it all, the devoted wife and the exciting mistress. He had believed he was in control. Now he was losing everything, and Heck didn't understand why. He had fatally miscalculated the value of what he had, and the true cost of his betrayal was only just beginning to come due. Do you think Arthur deserved this? Was Simona right to leave him? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Golden Hope Gala. The Golden Hope Gala was the jewel of the city's philanthropy season. A glamorous event where the city's old money and new power collided. For Arthur, it was more than a party. It was a lifeline. His business was bleeding. His reputation was in tatters, and he desperately needed new investors. He needed to project an image of stability and strength to remind Thewald that he was still Arthur Pierce, the man who could move mountains. He arrived alone, with Simone having finally and officially left him the week before. A departure that felt less like a broken heart and more like another asset being liquidated. He mowed through the opulent ballroom, a glass of champagne in his hand, forcing a smile, shaking hands, his eyes scanning the crowd for potential backers. He felt a bead of sweat run down his back. The vultures were circling. He could feel their eyes on him, their whispers following him like a shadow. And then the room went quiet. Not a sudden dramatic silence, but a slow rolling wave of stillness started at the entrance and spread through the crowd. Heads turned, conversations faltered. Arthur spun around, annoyed by the distraction. On this world stopped. Standing in the arched doorway, framed by the light, was Anna. But she wasn't the Anna he remembered. The soft, compliant woman he had taken for granted was gone. In her place was a goddess. She was radiant, dressed in a stunning emerald green gown that clung to her curves, her hair styled in elegant waves, her face lit by a serene, unshakable confidence. She looked powerful. She looked magnificent. And she was not alone. Cradled in her arms, wrapped in a soft cashmere blanket, was a beautiful baby boy with a shock of dark hair and his mother's calm, observant eyes. Arthur felt the champagne flute slip from his numb fingers, shattering on the marble floor, with a sound that seemed to echo the destruction of his own composure. It was her. After 9 months of silence, of nothing, here she was looking as if she just walked out of a dream. His dream, the one he had destroyed. Before could move, before he could process what he was seeing. Several of the city's most influential figures, thievery people Arthur was desperate to impress, converged on Anna. There was Jonathan Miller, the respected head of the gala's charity foundation, who greeted her with a warm paternal kiss on the cheek. There was Eleonora Menes, no relation, but the matriarch of one of the city's oldest families, who cooed over the baby. A murmur ran through their crowd as the truth dawned. Anna wasn't just a guest. A quick glance at the event program in a nearby guest's hand confirmed the unthinkable. On the list of the foundation's board members, there was a new name, Anna Dubois, her maiden name. She hadn't just survived, she had ascended. The position on that board was something Arthur had coveted for years. A seat that guaranteed access and influence, and Shehard won it. She moved through the room with a natural grace, politely ignoring Arthur's very existence. She laughed with a tech billionaire, discussed politics with the senator, and charmed everyone she met. She wasn't the victim, she was the victor. Finally, Arthur managed to corner her near a secluded terrace. "Anna," he breathed, his voice a roar. "What is this? Where have you been?" She turned to him, her expression not of anger or pain, but of a cold, distant assessment. She adjusted Noah in her arms. "I've been building a life, Arthur. A real one, a life," Yaudi sappered. I thought we all thought you were. You thought I was what? A victim, helpless. She finished for him, a small knowing smile playing on her lips. That was always your biggest mistake. You never truly saw me. I want to see my son, he said, his eyes fixed on the baby. His name is Noah. She said, her voice firm and protective. And you can't. Not like this. I left to protect them from a world of lies and betrayal. I won't bring him back into it. Across their room, Simone, who had come to the gala with a new, older, more stable but watched the exchange. She saw the power dynamic clear as day. She saw the way people clustered around Anna, the genuine respect and admiration in their eyes. She saw the way Arthur was looking at his wife, defeated, desperate, utterly impotent. In that moment, Simone knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice in leaving him. He had just lost his wife. He had lost the source of his power. He was an empty man, and Anna was the one who had finally exposed him. Arthur reached out her hand as if to touch Noah's cheek, but Anna took a step back, her eyes like sherds of ice. "Don't," she said, her voice low, but carrying the weight of unarraigned command. "You forfeited that right 9 months ago on a leather sofa in your office." She turned her back on him, leaving him standing alone on the terrace. The sounds of the party, of hissexes, washing over him. He was the ghost now, invisible in a room where his wife was the shining sun. The aftermath, the golden hope. Gala wasn't an ending. It was a declaration. In the weeks that followed, Arthur's desperate attempts to contact Anna were met with an impenetrable wall of silence. His calls were rerouted to her assistant, a professionally efficient woman, who informed him that Ms. Dubois's schedule was full. His emails went unanswered. The legal documents that arrived at his office were not for a messy, emotional divorce, but for a meticulously prepared alimony and custody agreement from one of the city's top family law attorneys. The terms were non-negotiable. He would provide financial support, and in return he would be granted supervised visitation twice a month in a neutral location upon completion of a court-mandated anger management and co-parenting course. There was no room for discussion. It was a business deal and she held all the cards. Anna, or rather Ms. Dubois, had played her hand with masterful precision. The story of her comeback was even more compelling than the story of her disappearance. She gave one and only one exclusive interview to a respected journalist. She didn't sling mud or revel in the sordid details of Arthur's affair. Instead, she spoke with eloquence and passion about the systemic challenge faced by women and children. In crisis, she announced that she was using her position on the board and her personal story to launch a new initiative through the Golden Hope Foundation. The project, it would establish a network of shelters and resource centers for women needed to escape abusive or unsustainable situations, providing them with legal aid, financial counseling, and the tools to build a new independent life. She had turned her pain into a platform, her personal tragedy into a public mission. She was no longer defined by her relationship with Arthur Pierce. She was defined by her work, her resilience, and her commitment to helping others, the public, and more importantly, the city's philanthropic elite were fascinated. Donations flooded into Project Hope. Anna became a celebrated and a symbol of strength and grace, while her public life was one of influence and purpose. Her private life remained anchored in the quiet simplicity she had found in Paris. She kept the seaside cabin, flying back and forth on a private plane, by the very alimony payments Arthur was forced to make. The cabin was her sanctuary, the place where she was not Miss Dubois, the formidable board member, but simply Mum. She and Noah would spend weeks at a time there, away from the noise and ambition of the city. Their days were filled with simple, profound joys she had dreamed of for him. They would walk on the beach, collecting shells, and watching the sandpipers race along the shoreline. She would read stories to him, not of fairy tales about princess and princesses, but of courageous explorers, brilliant scientists, and bold artists. She raised him with the sound of the ocean as his lullaby and the lessons of self-reliance and courage as his foundation. She taught him that strength wasn't about how much you had, but about how much you could overcome. She taught him that a home wasn't defined by the size of its rooms, but by the amount of love and truth within its. One night, as she sat on the porch of her cabin, watching Noah Takehi's first wobbly steps on the soft grass, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "I'm so sorry," it read. "I know it's too late, but I'm so sorry for everything." It was from Arthur. She read the message, took a deep breath of the salty air, and deleted it without replying. She had no space for his apology. It was a ghost from a life that no longer belonged to her. Her triumph was not in his regret, but in her own freedom. Disappearing had saved her. Returning had proven her strength. But this quiet, peaceful, authentic life she had built for herself and her son, this washer lasting victory. A year after the gala, Arthur sat alone in the sterile, minimalist living room of a new, smaller apartment. The penthouse, with its ghosts and memories, had been sold at a loss. His company, once a titan, had been forced into a merger, and he was now just a senior executive with a fancy title and little real power, a relic of a bygone era of unchecked ambition. Simone was a distant memory, her face occasionally smiling on the social pages, always beside someone more restable, more powerful. He was reading a business magazine on his tablet when he saw her. It was a cover story. Anna Dubois, the visionary binned Project Hope. The photo was of Anna standing on a cliff overlooking Theotian, the wind catching her hair. She wasn't smiling at the camera. She was looking out at the horizon, a look of serene, unshakable purpose on her face. Noah, now a sturdy toddler, was holding her hand, looking up at her with pure. He read the article, each word a new stab to his ego. It detailed an incredible success of her foundation, the lives she had changed, the powerful network she had built. It quoted senators, CEOs, and philanthropists, all praising her vision, her tenacity, her grace. The article mentioned him only once in a single brutal sentence. Ms. Dubois, defamer, wife of real estate developer Arthur Pierce, channeled her personal experience into a powerful force for social change. Former wife, a footnote in her story. Helen back, the tablet falling to the couch beside him. For months, he had been consumed by what he had lost, his company, his status, his money. But looking at that photo, at the woman she had become, and the son he barely knew, he finally understood the true depth of his loss. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost a partner whose silent strength had been the invisible scaffolding of his entire life. He had lost a woman of incredibly substance and resilience, a woman he had been too arrogant and too blind to ever truly see. He had seen her as a beautiful possession, a reflection of his own success, when in reality she was always the source of a light he had foolishly believed was his own. His supervised visits with Noah were stiff, awkward affairs. The boy was polite, but distant, a stranger who shared his DNA, but not his life. Noah's world was own of love, truth, and the sound of the ocean, a world built by his mother, a world from which Arthur was permanently exiled. He was just a visitor, a brief interruption twice a month in a life that was complete and happy without him. He finally understood that to lose someone who is willing to walk away, to raise herself and start over, is to lose a part of yourself that you can never get back. He had thought he was the sun and that she was a planet orbiting him. He was wrong. She was her own universe, and he had been nothing more than a passing comet, burning brightly and then fading into the vast indifferentness. The realization offered no comfort, no redemption. It was just the cold, hard, inescapable truth, the final crushing weight of his own choices. And there you have it, a story of betrayal, resilience, and the incredible power of a woman who refused to be broken. Anna's journey from a gilded cage to a life after true freedom shows us that our greatest strength is often forged in our deepest pain.